Good morning. Welcome to your Tuesday early morning intuitive guidance. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum here with some words of wisdom to start your day off well. And I actually think today's words are words of perspective, and an interesting perspective at that. So we'll see what y'all think. So let's start today with some tapping and some breath just to settle ourselves in, ground ourselves fully. I was working with a client yesterday, and that was one of the words that she pulled out in terms of answering my question about what did she need in order to take the step forward that she was wanting to take. And one of the words she used was grounding, that she needed to feel solid and ready to take a step forward on that particular thing. So let us do a little grounding, tapping, and breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Feel your roots go down through the soles of your feet and the base of your spine into Mother Earth. Breathe in. Breathe out. Large tap roots that ground us deeply, make us solid. And we have all the little feeder roots that run along the surface as well that feed us, just like the name. Good morning, Barb. You're the first one here today. Welcome, welcome. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Grounding, solidifying, getting to the point where stiff winds cannot tip us over. Breathe in. Breathe out. Just grounding, grounding, grounding. Breathe in. Breathe out. One more. Nice deep breath in. Hold. And release. And hopefully you can feel that sense of, yeah, I'm much more stable now than I was before I took the moment to breathe and to ground. So our reading for today is, like I said, to me, a perspective shift, and a very helpful perspective shift. Yes, absolutely. I think so many of us right now are kind of floating around above our bodies. Good morning, Jo Neal. Glad you are here. Welcome. The amount that there was a word, I can't find it. It's on my phone and I don't want to mess you guys up. But it was a little cartoon thingy that my sister sent me, and it was the word of the day, which was about this long, and combined it was exhausted, overwhelmed, and overstimulated. And it's a word now. And I thought that's very fitting for a lot of people. And we don't even realize how we set ourselves up for that. And we need to recognize it so that we can take the step back. Cut off a lot of things that put us in that position of losing our tether. So this particular part of the book that I want to read to you is a way to help us not just regain a tether. Good morning, Nancy. Glad you're here. Welcome. To regain a tether to how we've always done things, but to create a tether that is very grounding, solidifying, perspective shifting. And that's what I think is so important about this little piece. So, for those of you who've ordered it since I started talking about it, good morning, Beth. Welcome. Glad you're here. Saving God from Religion, a minister's search for faith in a skeptical age. So, for those of you who already have the book, today we are going to be on page 137. 137. And the section is called Knocking on Heaven's Door. And he's talking about prayer. And how many of you even just hear the word prayer and go, ee. This is a different perspective of prayer. We've been kind of noodling around with this idea, and some of that coming from this book, but some of it coming from other sources as well, that the beseeching of God really wasn't what was intended with the idea. It was more about clearing the slate, emptying oneself, allowing the silence. Good morning, Janice. Glad you're here. Welcome. And noticing. in this particular section kind of talks about that. So, and how to honor that we have science. We have science, and science is good. Good morning, Janine. Glad you are here. But we also have faith, and faith is good, and they are not mutually exclusive, regardless of how many people try to convince us of such. Good morning, Angie. Glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. So those of you who are on here today, know that there's something in here for you, and I'm just going to read like 2 pages, and then just let it percolate for a while. You don't have to create any answers out of this, but he asks a lot of kind of what if sorts of questions that I'd love for us to allow to percolate for a while. Thank you for the sparkles, Angie. I like them. So, knocking on heaven's door. Breath in, breath out, open to receiving. Let's imagine that you are one of those people who struggle with the whole idea of prayer, but also believe that as a spiritual practice, it has power and relevance. Let's imagine that you are hungry for some regular moments of authentic communication, to speak and hear words that are deep, candid, and soulful in a world full of shallow noise and commercial racket. I loved that sentence. Let me read it again. Let's imagine that you are hungry for some regular moments of authentic communication, to speak and hear words that are deep, candid, and soulful in a world full of shallow noise and commercial racket. Let's imagine that you might be one of those people who hesitate to bow their heads and close their eyes, who may even cringe at the way prayer has become a form of insider trading. Let's imagine that you are someone who both reads the science section of the New York Times and still goes to church, synagogue, or mosque. Let's imagine further that you know that the 3-story cosmology of those who first modeled prayer for us no longer exists, nor does the image of a tribal god make any sense to you. How do you pray? To whom or to what? To what are your prayers addressed? And what, if anything, can you expect the results of your prayers to be? The answers may lie in the most basic assumptions we have about what prayer is designed to do. The traditional language about prayer, as well as the practice of much public and private prayer, is to get a message to God, to make a connection between humans and God, to get a very long distance call to go through, if you will. All the ancient language is about God hearing our prayers, and about our longing for God to answer them. If this does not happen, we are left to deal as best we can with unanswered prayers. Unless there is no hearing in the human sense, except by those offering the prayer or listening to it, and no answer either. What if prayer is not a transaction to begin with, but rather a profound spiritual practice that changes something about our way of being in the world? What if the particular posture of prayer, the cautious and reverential use of language, and the humility that comes from admitting that we will never understand why things happen, conspires to change everything by the simple act of praying to begin with? So it's in the doing of the praying, not in the results. Okay, let me see here. Answers are what humans give. Consequences are what God mysteriously enables. Given the barrage of superficial and deceptive language in our culture, prayer can be one activity that carves out sacred space. There we are, back to that sacred space. The open field, right? Where it's silent. And it appears nothing's happening, but everything's happening. For authentic and humble communication, in a landscape of lies and hyperbole, a prayer that is honest and self-emptying can almost startle us by comparison. As someone called upon to pray in front of other people, he's a minister, it has always struck me that by addressing words to God, I give people the chance to do one of the most powerful things in human communication. they overhear. What is overheard is often not how different we are, but what a vast storehouse of common yearnings we share. I love that. A vast storehouse of common yearnings. What is overheard is how much, despite our differences, we all ache for justice, and how universal is our impatience with the way things are compared with the way they ought to be. Hearing ourselves say it, or someone we trust say it, is cathartic. So I'm going to stop there. But I just thought that was such a lovely shift in our perspectives about prayer. For years, I've avoided the word because it has so many connotations. Okay, God, here's my list. Let's see how you do on that. Chop, chop. No. That was one of the reasons I loved the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Because she's just having a conversation, right? She's not forcing things to be a certain way. She's meeting up. She's having a coffee date with God, right? Well, she was a kid, so she probably didn't do coffee. But nonetheless, you get the idea, right? And Angie, your name is rolling, rolling, rolling. So there's something good here for you, dear. Let's take a breath. Let it go. What if in the posing of our questions for God, we're not expecting an answer, but in us posing them, what if we prayed out loud and we could hear ourselves say the things that we're wondering about? So, God, I'm wondering about this. How does this work? I don't get it. And we're not expecting an answer. We're just putting it out there where we can observe it. We can observe it with our ears, our hearing ears, but we can also observe it with our intuitive ears. I've had the experience where I've put something out there like that, or I've gone to the open field. I've spent time in that spaciousness, and it's informed all kinds of things. It's triggered off some dreams. It triggered off some journaling. It set up some conversations with people. Hey, I was thinking about blah, blah, blah. Have you ever thought about that? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is no. So yes, conversations. And again, not necessarily looking for answers. Look for outcomes. See how things unfold. I wonder how that's going to go. I wonder how that's going to work out. Being curious and allowing, however it works out, to work out. One of the things that I have witnessed, both within myself and within a multitude of clients over 40 plus years of doing psychotherapy and coaching, is how much we want to control the outcomes. We want it to be a certain way. It needs to be a certain size, a certain flavor, a certain color, a certain whatever, and happen in this timing and blah, blah, blah. The more we let go of that, I'm offering this up, our God jar. I'm offering this up. However it unfolds, it unfolds. Let me kind of roll with that unfolding. Let's see what happens. Let's allow for the divine and not try to micromanage God's business. So, how does this feel to you? How scary is this for you? Or is this like, ooh, this is a cool idea. Let's mess around with this for a while. What if we play around with this and see what comes? See how things go. See what the unfoldings are. See what we take for lessons out of things. How do we frame something up, and what do we take forth from it? Take a breath. Let it go. You know when's a great time to pray like this? When you're out on a walk, when you're wandering around in nature, when you go sit at the park and feed the birds, when you take a stroll down the main street, when you go for a drive, a Sunday drive. That's another time when this would be great. When you go sit at the airport and watch the airplanes take off. All of those times where you're creating some space. I love that word spaciousness. I think that is such a helpful word as we're thinking about this. We try to box all this stuff up and make it, the God in the image of man thing just kind of blows my mind. Good morning, Mel. Glad you are here. But it makes sense. if this is what we observe through our five senses, it's what we're going to project onto something we don't understand. We do that with animals. We anthropomorphize. We give them human characteristics, which may or may not fit, but it's our way of trying to understand something that's different than us, or seems different than us. Again, to come at this from the perspective of it's all one. We're just looking at particular aspects of it, but it's all one, helps move us into that place of flow and into that place of curiosity where we can learn more. So your call to action today is think about this. Think about this. What happens if I merely open myself up to conversations and I don't necessarily expect answers in the form of human answers, words that I hear in my literal ears, but I open up the space. It's like hollering into the Grand Canyon and the echoes come back. Listen for the echo. See what comes back. Play around with this. Be the little kid with this. Be kind of excited about this. The kid who stands in the room that echoes and just goes, ah, 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 and listens to that echo. Play with it. Play with it. See what you get. Love to hear. Put some things in the feed. When you've done this, and most of us have, when you've done this and shifted the perspective from a transaction with God, I put in my request, I get my answer, to a musing, a conversation, a poem to God, whatever it is. And again, I'm using the word God, but use whatever word you like. I like spirit. I like creator. I like all that is. Whatever works for you. Play with this. And I like the word play. Don't make this work. Play with it. And let's see what comes up. Have an awesome Tuesday. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are. Bye-bye.